Step 1, we'll super glue the nose cone cap to the nose cone. This is the only step we'll use super glue. So put a thin layer all around the circumference here.
And then just put the nose cone on.
Just put it in there. I like to give it a 90-degree turn.
Yeah, that's
and we're just gonna
just like put it in, turned it a bit, and then left it.
I've got a drip. I'm just gonna wipe that on some plastic there. And we'll set that off to dry. Step 2, we have to remove the fins and sand them. They should just pop right out of their sprues. Save some of these pieces, they'll be useful later. So the fins, we want to sand the broad surface just so it's smooth, and I prefer holding the sandpaper on the table, moving the fin. So just quickly, both sides, all 3 fins. Then if you feel along the edges, there's these little bumps. So we need to completely sand that off. And to make sure that all the fins stay the exact same size, my favorite way is I get all 3 fins together with the sides. And again, with the sandpaper on the table, I'm going to sand all 3 fins at once. I have a pretty firm grip so they don't slide, and it's on the top. And just that, I cannot feel the bumps anymore, so that's good. And I'm going to use this side, make sure they're all still lined up. And by keeping them together, it kind of helps make sure that we sand off the same amount from each fin so that they stay the same size and stay balanced. So I got to do the bottom of the fin and the outside. A little more. So now if I rub my hand along all the edges, it feels smooth, and the same with the wide surfaces. Optional, step 2.5 or something. To get the best flight, one way to make a little difference is to shape the fins a little. If we look at the fin from here, this is sort of straight sides. It's kind of a little bit wide. So it's like this. The best shape for flight is if it's like that, where the top of it is rounded and then the bottom kind of comes to a point. So my fins are going to be attached like this. So this is the top of my fin. So I'm just going to use the sandpaper to round the corners there a little bit. And then this is the bottom of the fin. So I'm going to use the sandpaper and actually sand along that surface to try to make it come to a point. And I'm going to do all this with the sandpaper flat on the table. So to round the top, I'm just going to start sanding and curve it over. And just that little bit of curve is all I need. So I'm going to sort of sand and curve. So now it's still hard to see. Like that. But you see the top of that fin has a curve to it. It's not just a square corner. Just that little bit of curve is all. Now to bring the bottom to a point, this is a little trickier. I'm going to hold the fin almost flat, just at a little bit of an angle up like that. If you've ever sharpened a knife, this is very similar. I'm just going to move it back and forth a little bit on one side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So here's my fin. The top is rounded and the bottom has a little bit of a point. I'm going to do that to my other 2 fins. Step 3, we're going to mutilate our instructions. Yeah, it's good if you're sitting next to somebody because we actually need to cut out this right here, this rectangle. But it's going to make it so we can't read the next step. They haven't redesigned these rules in years, and they should. Bad user interface. But you only need one of these, and you can share it with somebody else. And so if somebody keeps their instructions whole, we can read the instructions next. But we do need to cut out this tube marking guide. So this whole rectangle, including those diagonal lines, we don't need to cut it too perfectly. And all right. Clear plastic tape. So we are just gonna wrap this around the rocket, and the little diagonal lines, you're just gonna overlap that part. You're gonna line up these horizontal lines, and once it's all lined up, kind of wrapped snugly, just a piece of clear plastic tape to hold it in place. So it should slide around some. We just want that kind of close to the end a little bit. And on this, the different lines, let's see, 3 of them say FL. That means that's going to be a fin line. FL, FL. And we have one dotted line that says LL. That's going to be for the for the launch lug. We're going to make a mark for each of those. So the fin lines, make your mark down near the bottom. Once you make the first mark, don't let this piece of paper spin, because the marks we make is set up so that our 3 fins are evenly spaced. So FL, FL, FL. And then we're also going to make a mark at the dashed LL line. We're going to make that mark on the top side. Then you can slide that off, and you can let your neighbor use that tube so they don't have to cut up their instructions. And I've got 3 marks, 2, 3 along the bottom here, and I have 1 mark up there. Next part of step 3. It's gonna be hard to see this step. I'm at the door. We just need some sort of structure that has like a 90-degree small little gap. Door frames are perfect for this, because we need to make some straight lines with the marks we made. And if we just put a ruler on the smooth surface, it's gonna slide around. So I'm gonna tuck this tube into that 90-degree thing, and I can rotate it. And I'm gonna rotate it until one of the lines I made is right with the wood, and I'm gonna use the edge of the wood basically as my ruler to draw the line there. That is hard to see. And now I'm going to go to the next one. These lines near the bottom, I want them to go all the way to the bottom of the rocket. And I got a 3rd one right here. I also have this mark up here with my launch lug, so I'm going to line that up. That line I want to go right through the middle of the rocket. So I've got a line up here for the launch lug, and then 1, 2, 3 lines along the bottom of my rocket that I'll use to line up the fins. Time to glue on the fins. Not really. We're going to use the super secret McNamara gluing method. It's not a secret, but this works really good for any wood glue or Elmer's. We're going to double glue these, which means we're going to get some glue on the fin and on the tube where the fins are going to go. We're going to let that dry, and then later we'll come back, we'll add more fresh glue and stick it together permanently. So I'm going to add a very thin bead of glue on this edge of the fin that is going to be glued to the rocket. It's a tiny amount, is all you need. I'm going to press that onto the line I've drawn on the rocket, right where the fin's going to go. I'm just going to wiggle it around a little bit to spread the glue, and then I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to set this fin aside. The glue is going to dry on the edge of it, and the glue is going to dry on that. So I'm going to do that with the other fins. And this straw is what we're going to glue onto the launch lug line. So I'm going to do the same thing. Add a little bit of glue to this straw. This straw is made out of paper, so Elmer's is perfect for that as well. Same thing, I'm just going to get glue where it's going to end up going, peel it off, and now I'm going to let all that dry for like 30 minutes. even overnight. All right. So my glue's dried. It's actually a few hours after I put on the first layer. And now I'm actually going to attach the fin. So all I'm going to do is add a fresh new layer of glue. Again, I'm not going to use too much glue. If you use a lot of glue, it's going to be wet and the fin will sort of slide around. And I'm try to be careful here. I'm going to line it up with the line, make some good contact. Now the lining with the doorknob will line it up along with the tube, but I need to sort of look at it straight on to make sure that the fin is sticking out straight from the tube. That can be tricky. That looks good to me. I'm going to give it just another little push down, making sure there's good contact. And I'm going to hold it down for about 2 minutes. If you have shaky hands, you may not want to actually touch the fin, but hold on to your tube for 2 minutes, keeping it upright. Don't let it tilt like that because gravity will make that fin sag like that. Don't just lay it on the table either because it will tip a little bit. So hold it in your hands about 2 minutes. Don't let anything bump it. The fins are going to be extremely delicate basically until we're painted. The littlest bump can knock them off. This part's tricky. Be patient. You don't need much glue. And we'll have to do this process for all 3 fins, though once this one fin sets up, I'm going to let it dry for about 10 minutes before I try to do the next fin, and I'll just get some other stuff done while I'm waiting. Forgot to say one thing. So I'm still holding my fin upright, letting it dry. After it's been about 2 minutes, so it's still very delicate, but my fin, it should be sturdy enough where I can put the rocket vertically. Again, not that way because gravity pulled that way, but holding it vertically. And we don't need to keep holding it now. If you put it on a rod that's going to be set up in the classroom or something, I'm actually going to stash mine upside down on the other side of the room so the fin, again, kind of back it up here, the fin is vertical at this point. So kind of hold it upright like that for at least 2 minutes and then let it dry the rest of the way where nothing's going to bump it for 10-15 minutes before you try the next fin. Now that the fins are glued on and the glue's dried, I'm actually going to add some more glue and I'm going to put it right in the corner of all these fins. So I'm going to add a small line of glue right there, and I'm actually going to use my finger to sort of push it into the corner, and the curve of my finger will kind of spread the glue up onto the fin and onto the body tube. Make sure that glue is open. There it is. I'm gonna get it on both sides. Now, just my finger. I'll just wipe it off over there. Yeah, so just a little bit more glue, but I don't know if you can see, but it's sort of spread up on the fin, and that's going to just create some extra support. So we'll do that to all the fins, and I'm going to do that to both sides of the straw as well. Now that the fins are glued on, we can go to the next step. But the fins are still very delicate, so I'm not going to put any weight on the fins. I'm going to be careful not to bump it when I do set down my rocket. I'm going to put it on this block so the fins just hang over the edge. So we'll need our rocket in a second. But for this step, we need this yellow spacer tube, a popsicle stick, or I just saved a piece from the fins that we're going to use to spread some glue. We need some glue. We need a pencil. We need a ruler. And we need this small green ring that is called the launch lug. Inside the little bag here. So this step is literally gluing this piece inside the body at the right distance. So if we follow the instructions, we're going to grab this spacer, and it says to measure in 1/4 inch from the edge. Make a mark. So that's all we need. We have a mark 1/4 inch from the edge. When we do glue it, we're going to use this to push in the launch lug, and we'll stop right at that line, pull it back out. So this is the exact right distance. Also, the instructions, it says the glue needs to be 2 inches inside the tube. So I'm actually going to measure on this stick 2 inches down. All right. Now I'm going to make a mark there. So now if I put glue on this edge and I use this to spread the glue inside the tube, that line will let me know when I'm 2 inches in. And I'm going to do that just now. All right, some glue. Go in. My mark's at 2 inches. So once I hit that mark, I'm just going to spread it around the outside. Reload a little more glue. You can do this step before you put the fins on. Just make sure you put the fins on the same side that you glue this ring on. All right. So I got glue smeared all around the inside. Now I'm gonna carefully place the launch lug ring right in the base. And be really careful with the fins this whole time. And I'll use the spacer. And again, you don't push the spacer all the way in. We're stopping at that mark we made, a 1/4 inch in. And that should push the ring into the glue. Stop right there. Pull that out. And we're just going to let that ring dry in the middle there. And again, to make sure there's no weight on the fins, I'm just going to put it back on the other side vertically like that so it's nice and safe. Right. The next step is going to be attaching the shock cord and the streamer. But we actually need the shock cord mount, which is another piece we are cutting out from our instructions. So we've got this trapezoid. Yep. Open up our instructions. And we're going to do some gluing. So I'm just going to grab a piece of scratch paper. It's going to make it harder to see, but I'll work right there. I'm going to hold it just like it has the instructions. So we're going to put some glue right in the center of number 2. You don't need tons. Sort of lay the cord right in it. So one end of the cord is in that section number 2. Now I'm going to fold it on a dotted line so that the number 1 folds over. Oh, my cord slipped a little bit. Get it back here. All right, so fold number 1, so it overlaps number 2. And if you squeeze it down, it'll make a good seal with the glue. Okay. Now we're going to add some glue to section number 3, and I'm just going to put it like right over the shock cord and everything. I like to wiggle the shock cord around, spread the glue a little bit, and we're going to fold it on the other dotted line. And it's going to overlap itself. Again, press it right down, squeeze it into the glue. So we got multiple layers of paper and glue and elastic all holding itself together. And the instructions are telling us to measure 1.5 inches into the body tube and glue this in there. My fingers are so fat I can't reach that far, so I'm going to use my pinky, and I'm basically going to get that little piece of paper, and as far as I can get my pinky in there, put it in there, and then press it against the side. So this paper will go inside the tube and glue against the side. Yeah. All right, so glue on the outside as far as my pinky will reach and press it against the side there. Now we can let that dry. Final construction step. In between the last one, I ended up spraying primer on my rocket. I let it dry, and I did a coat of red paint. I forgot my nose cone here when I went down to the art room to paint, so the nose cone's still white from the primer. But everyone, you should at least use a coat of primer, the spray paint, because actually that forms another layer that helps hold things together. But the last step here is attaching the shot cord to the nose cone and then to the streamer. Again, I don't want, even though it's all painted and it's as sturdy as it's going to be, I'm going to avoid putting any pressure on my fins at all, so that rocket's just going to sort of hang there. And you just tie the end of the shot cord to the nose cone, just put it through the loop there and tie a double knot. So cross it over through the loop, pull it tight. Single knot and cross it over through the loop, pull it tight. Double knot. All right. And then we're gonna tape this streamer onto the bungee, just sort of like using a piece of clear plastic tape here. Instructions suggest going down about 2 inches from the nose cone. So I'm gonna get a ruler. This part does not really need to be exact, but all right, that's about 2 inches. Let me move this a little closer. All right, right about there. Let's grab a small piece of tape. Tape it right to the edge and just make good contact with the elastic, good contact with the plastic of the flag. And I even like to sort of like fold it and press. Really want that tape to make good contact all around. And just a piece of tape is usually good enough, actually. If you go like that and really press it down, it's a good seal. But I actually like to put a staple right through it as well. So with a stapler, I'm gonna line up the elastic with the little marks on the bottom, and that should make the staple go right through the elastic, right through the streamer. So I'm gonna line up just right so it's right in the middle if I can. So if you're really careful with the staple, you can try it. It adds a little bit of extra weight to it, but I like doing that. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I did it just so I could show you that it's an option, though I feel like I did a pretty good job pressing that tape down and probably wasn't worth adding the extra weight, but it's just one staple. But to stash this thing, you kind of fold the streamer into thirds. Then after it's folded, you can kind of roll it up from the end. And I'll make a somewhat tidy cylinder, and we should be able to work the lower part of the elastic back into the tube. It's always a little tricky because you're also holding the streamer so it doesn't unravel itself. There's actually one other thing we'll do. All right. So my nose cone, it's loose. If I hang it upside down, the nose cone slides right out. So I'll show you that again. Gotta get that elastic back in there. This is exciting viewing, I'm sure. Yeah, so the nose cone's so loose that it will slide right out. We don't want that. We want the nose cone to be snug, not too snug. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take another piece of clear tape here. And I'm just going to go around the base of the nose cone here, the part that slides into the tube of the rocket. So just carefully putting a piece of tape around it. And even though it's a thin piece of tape, it's just going to increase the circumference, increase the diameter of the nose cone a little bit. That's better. It's not falling on its own, but I'm going to do a little test. If I shake it down, oh, that's not bad. All right.